If you like our short stories, please like, comment, and subscribe. The Rogers family had always adored Christmas. For years, their home had been a haven of warmth and light, filled with the comforting scent of freshly baked cookies, the twinkling glow of decorations, and the laughter of loved ones gathered together. Every Christmas Eve, without fail, they would bundle up and head outside to build the grandest snowman in their front yard, each year topping the last with ever more elaborate creations. It had become a tradition, one that Sam Rogers, their youngest son, looked forward to more than anything else. This year, however, was different. Sam was 12 now, and the snowman he had envisioned was more ambitious than any other. Taller, grander, with a carved face that looked almost lifelike, it was a snowman that would surely be remembered for generations to come. Sam had insisted on constructing it alone, eager to prove his creativity. His parents, tired but eager to see their son's excitement, agreed, though they kept a watchful eye from the warmth of the house. The night was crisp and cold, the kind of chill that nipped at the skin and made you thankful for the cozy fire crackling inside. Sam worked tirelessly, rolling large snowballs and stacking them one by one. The wind howled through the trees as the full moon cast an eerie glow over the yard. It was almost as if the night itself was watching him, its icy breath nipping at his back as he carved out the snowman's eyes, its grin. He stepped back to admire his work, feeling a sense of accomplishment swell inside him. It was the tallest snowman he had ever built, easily 8 feet high, looming like a silent sentinel in their yard. Its face was sculpted with remarkable detail, a twisted smile that sent a chill down Sam's spine. He could have sworn that the eyes seemed to glimmer in the moonlight, as if they were watching him, tracking his every movement. He shook off the unease that crept up his spine, chalking it up to the cold night air and the shadows playing tricks on him. When he turned to head back inside, he glanced over his shoulder at the snowman one last time. The wind had picked up again, howling through the trees with a ferocity that rattled the windows. But the snowman stood still, too still. Its eyes seemed to burn with an intensity that made Sam hesitate. He rubbed his arms, trying to shake off the sudden feeling of dread that washed over him. But before he could turn away completely, he thought he saw the snowman's arms move, just slightly. He blinked, and in that instant it was gone. There was no movement, nothing but the towering figure standing in the yard, its grin frozen in place. It was just his imagination, he told himself. But deep down, a knot of unease formed in his stomach, one that he couldn't shake. He hurried inside, where the warm glow of the fireplace greeted him, and the familiar voices of his parents filled the air. He joined them at the table for their Christmas Eve dinner, the laughter and cheer of the evening doing little to dispel the chill he still felt. As they ate, Sam couldn't stop thinking about the snowman. It was the strangest thing. He had built it, yes, but there was something unnerving about the way it had seemed to watch him. He wanted to forget about it, to push the strange feeling out of his mind and focus on the holiday, but it lingered. Later that night, after the family had finished their meal and settled into the cozy living room to enjoy the warmth of the fire, Sam excused himself to head upstairs. He couldn't sleep, the unease still gnawing at him. He crept quietly down the hall and peeked out the window, his breath fogging the glass as he looked out into the yard. At first, everything seemed still. The wind had died down and the snow-covered landscape gleamed in the pale light of the moon. But then Sam's heart skipped a beat. The snowman was different. Its arms, he was sure of it, were raised. They weren't in the same position he had left them in earlier. The snowman's posture had changed. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was just imagining things. But when he looked again, there was no mistaking it. The snowman's arms were reaching out, as if it were alive, as if it were stretching, trying to break free from the frozen prison it had been sculpted into. Sam's breath caught in his throat, his pulse quickening. Was it really moving? Or was it just the wind playing tricks on him? He pressed his forehead against the cold window, staring out into the darkness, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The wind had picked up again, swirling around the yard in a frenzy. The snowman stood still, its dark eyes staring straight at him. "Sam?" came a voice from behind him. He jumped, startled. It was his father, standing in the doorway of his bedroom, his face filled with concern. "Everything okay, son?" Sam turned quickly, trying to shake the feeling of dread that had settled deep in his chest. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, forcing a smile. Just couldn't sleep." His father gave him a puzzled look but said nothing more. "All right. Just don't stay up too late. Big day tomorrow. Sam nodded, though he wasn't sure he'd be able to sleep at all. He stayed by the window for a moment longer, staring out at the snowman, its eyes still fixed on him. Then, with a deep breath, he closed the blinds and tried to push the unease from his mind. But deep down he knew something wasn't right. The next morning, the Rogers family awoke to a picturesque Christmas morning. Snow covered the ground in a thick, soft blanket, and the air outside was crisp and clean, the kind of winter day that begged to be enjoyed. The warmth of the house was a sharp contrast to the chill outside, and the smell of cinnamon rolls wafted through the air as Sam's mother bustled in the kitchen. Sam, however, could not shake the odd sense of dread that had settled over him since the night before. He tried to push it aside as he rushed downstairs, eager to unwrap gifts and enjoy the holiday with his family. But his mind kept drifting back to the snowman. Its eyes, those dark, lifeless eyes that seemed to watch him, were etched into his mind. "Sam, come on! You're going to miss the presents!" His older sister Anna called from the living room, her voice pulling him from his thoughts. With a reluctant sigh, Sam joined the family around the Christmas tree, trying to immerse himself in the holiday cheer. For a while, it worked. Laughter filled the room as they opened gifts and exchanged heartfelt thanks. But through it all, Sam's gaze would wander to the window, to the yard where the snowman stood, tall and imposing. It was then that he noticed something strange. The snowman was closer, or at least it seemed that way. From his spot by the window, Sam could see that the snowman was no longer standing in the same position he had left it in the night before. It was leaning slightly forward, its arms lowered just a little as though it had been in motion. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. Nothing had changed. Or had it? "Sam?" his father called, his voice pulling Sam's attention back to the present. "You okay? You've been staring out the window for a while." Sam's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't even realized he was doing it. He quickly turned away from the window and forced a smile. "Yeah, just, looking at the snow." His father raised an eyebrow but didn't press the matter further. "Well, come on, kiddo. Time for breakfast." Sam nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling of something watching him, something that wasn't the snowman, but something far more sinister, something lurking just outside the window, waiting. As the family sat down to breakfast, Sam's mother began to notice the strange atmosphere in the house. "Has anyone heard from the neighbors? It's been so quiet around here today," she remarked, looking out the window toward the neighboring houses which were normally bustling with activity during the holidays. Sam noticed the oddness of the silence too. Normally, there would be laughter and shouts as families gathered for the holiday. Children playing in the snow, adults chatting over coffee, exchanging pleasantries. But today the town felt eerily still. The wind whispered outside, but no sounds of life could be heard. It was as if the entire neighborhood had frozen in time. Sam didn't speak up, but he couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of unease. He thought back to the journal he had found in the attic last night, his great-grandfather's journal. The words were still fresh in his mind. "Once the snowman is built, it cannot be moved. If it is, the curse is awakened, and those who disturb it will be marked for death." At the time, Sam had dismissed it as just an old family legend, a story that had been passed down through generations, meant to frighten children into good behavior. But now, with everything that had happened, his unease, the strange movement of the snowman, and the oppressive silence hanging over their home, Sam wasn't so sure anymore. "What's wrong, Sam?" Anna asked, her voice tinged with concern. Sam realized he had been zoning out again, staring at nothing in particular. "Nothing," he muttered, trying to hide his nerves. "I'm fine," but deep down he knew something was wrong. The snowman wasn't just a decoration anymore. It was something far more dangerous. Something that was watching him, stalking him. And as the day wore on, that feeling only grew stronger. After breakfast, Sam excused himself from the table, needing some fresh air. His family barely noticed as he slipped outside, his boots crunching in the thick snow. The yard was eerily quiet, save for the occasional gust of wind that sent a chill through the air. Sam's gaze immediately fell upon the snowman, standing in the yard as if it had always been there. But something was different now. It was closer, its towering form seeming to loom over him more than ever before. The snowman's eyes burned with an intensity that made Sam's blood run cold. It was as though it was alive, watching him, studying him, He approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He was afraid to get too close, but he couldn't look away. As he stood before it, he noticed something even stranger. There were faint footprints in the snow around the snowman's base. They didn't seem to belong to anyone in the family. They were small, childlike, but they were also wrong, as though something had been walking around it, circling it, waiting. A strange whisper tugged at the edges of his mind. Sam spun around, his breath coming in quick bursts. But there was no one there. No one but him and the snowman. He backed away slowly, his feet crunching on the snow. The snowman's eyes never left him. He could feel them on his back, even as he turned to walk back toward the house. Something was wrong, something far beyond the ordinary. And as much as he wanted to believe it was all in his head, Sam knew one thing for sure. The snowman was alive. And it was not just a decoration, it was something far darker. As Sam walked back toward the house, he could feel the weight of the snowman's gaze following him, its hollow eyes never leaving his figure. The further he moved away, the more oppressive the feeling became, as though the air was thick with something ancient, something that didn't belong. The snowman was not just part of the landscape anymore. It was a presence, a looming threat in the yard that seemed to draw him back, even as he tried to escape it. When he stepped inside the warmth of the house, he immediately felt the tension in the air. The quiet that had filled the streets now seemed to seep into their home. His parents were sitting at the kitchen table, quietly sipping their coffee, but the usual cheerfulness of Christmas was gone. The house felt unnaturally still. Even Anna, who was usually bursting with energy, sat quietly by the fireplace, staring into the flickering flames. "Sam, you okay?" his mother asked, her voice laced with concern as he entered the room. She had always been able to tell when something was wrong with him. "Yeah," Sam replied quickly, but the words tasted hollow on his tongue. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him, a suffocating sense of dread that he couldn't shake. "What's going on outside?" his father asked, breaking the silence that had settled over them. "It's so quiet out there today. I can't remember a Christmas where the neighborhood was so still." Sam's heart skipped a beat as his mind raced. He had noticed it too, the absence of the usual sounds of life outside. The laughter of children playing in the snow, the chatter of neighbors gathering in their yards, the sound of carolers walking down the street. All absent, replaced only by the howling wind and an oppressive silence. "I don't know," Sam muttered, unable to hide the unease in his voice. He had no answers, no explanation for the strange happenings that seemed to be escalating around him. He knew something was terribly wrong, but he didn't know how to stop it. "I'm going to take a walk," Sam's father said suddenly, pushing his chair back from the table. "I'll check on the neighbors. Maybe they're just busy with their own celebrations." Sam watched him leave, his footsteps heavy as he walked toward the front door. He didn't know why, but the thought of his father going outside made his stomach twist. It was as if the snowman was waiting for him, as though it was drawn to anyone who ventured too close. Once the door closed behind his father, the house seemed to grow even quieter. Sam tried to shake the feeling of panic rising within him, but he couldn't. He needed answers, and he needed them now. Anna had already gone upstairs to her room, leaving Sam alone in the living room. He walked over to the bookshelf, scanning the titles of books that lined the shelves, but nothing caught his eye. His thoughts were too scattered, too filled with the image of that snowman standing outside. Its twisted grin still burned into his memory. Then he remembered the journal. Sam had found it the previous night, buried in the attic underneath a pile of old holiday decorations. It had belonged to his great-grandfather, someone he had never met but had heard stories about. His parents had often mentioned how the man had been a bit of an eccentric, interested in strange local legends and ancient rituals. Sam had always brushed off the stories as just that. Stories meant to scare kids, but now, with the strange events unfolding around him, he couldn't help but think there might be more truth to those tales than he'd realized. Sam raced upstairs to the attic, his footsteps quick and urgent as he made his way to the dusty old chest where the journal had been hidden. He pried open the lid and found the leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and worn with age. He sat down on the floor and opened the first page, scanning the faded handwriting that filled the pages. As he read, his stomach sank lower with each word. The snowman must never be disturbed. Once built, it becomes a vessel for the spirit of winter, an ancient force bound to this land for centuries. If the snowman is moved or altered, it awakens, and the curse will befall all who live here. The more Sam read, the more he learned about the curse. His great-grandfather had written about the ritual that the town had once performed, how they built a snowman every Christmas Eve to appease the spirit of the land, ensuring the town's prosperity for another year. But as time passed, the ritual had been forgotten, the significance of the snowman lost to the passing generations. The journal continued. If the snowman's face is altered, if its position is disturbed, or if it is moved after its creation, the curse will be awakened. The spirit of winter will take form, and it will demand a sacrifice from the family that dares to alter its place. Sam's heart raced. He had altered the snowman, his carving, the twisted grin, the unnerving eyes. They had changed it, made it something more than just a decoration, and now it was awake. He slammed the book shut, the weight of his discovery hitting him hard. The snowman wasn't just a harmless part of their holiday tradition. It was a powerful, malevolent force, and it was coming for them. Suddenly, there was a knock at the attic door, making Sam jump. His father's voice called through the door. "Sam, you up there?" Sam's heart stopped. The voice was off, slightly distorted, as though it was being filtered through layers of snow. He rushed to the door, opening it just a crack, expecting to see his father standing there, eager to come back inside. But there was no one there. Only a gust of cold wind blew through the crack, chilling him to the bone. He stepped out into the hallway, his pulse pounding in his ears. That's when he heard it. A whisper, faint at first, but growing louder. It was coming from downstairs, from the direction of the living room. "Sam, Sam." The voice was soft, almost pleading. It wasn't his father's voice. It wasn't Anna's either. It was something else. Something that didn't belong. He backed away slowly, the chill creeping up his spine. And then, the unmistakable sound of the door opening reached his ears, followed by a faint crunching of snow outside. The snowman was moving. The air was growing colder and the curse was awakening.